Imagine standing outside in the middle of a vast, treeless tundra. The wind is screaming across the plains, and the temperature has plummeted to minus 40 degrees. To put that in perspective, without modern gear, a human being would be a popsicle in less than 2 hours. Your lungs would burn with every breath, and the cold would feel less like a temperature and more like a physical assault. But if we could peel back the curtain of time and look into the darkness 30,000 years ago, we wouldn't find a pile of frozen corpses. Instead, we'd see a flicker of warm, orange light and hear the muffled sound of a family laughing and settling in for the night. You have to wonder, how on earth did they do it? How did our ancestors turn a frozen hellscape into a home without a single piece of timber in sight? The answer is as metal as it gets. They built palaces out of the giants they shared the earth with. We're talking about the legendary Mammoth bone huts. If you travel to places like Mezherik in modern-day Ukraine, you'll find the remains of what can only be described as a prehistoric architectural miracle. During the last glacial maximum, the world was a brutal place, and since there were no forests to provide wood for cabins, these people looked at a pile of mammoth remains and thought, yeah, that'll work. But this wasn't just some messy pile of bones. This was high-end engineering. Think about the sheer scale of this project for a second. To build just one of these circular dwellings, they used the remains of about 95 mammoths. In one specific village, researchers found 4 huts that required the bones of at least 149 individual mammoths. We are talking about 15 tons of bone for a single house. Just imagine the logistics of moving 15 tons of skeletal material across a frozen landscape. It makes your last move with a U-Haul look like a walk in the park. They used the massive lower jawbones of the mammoths as the foundation, stacking them in a herringbone pattern like prehistoric bricks to create a solid base that wouldn't budge in the gale force winds. Then came the artistic flair. They didn't just throw things together, they had a sense of symmetry and style. They used the giant curved tusks to create majestic arches for the roof, reaching up to 12 meters in diameter. It probably looked more like a cathedral or a dragon's ribcage than a simple hut. Once the skeleton of the house was up, they draped it in thick layers of animal hides, likely weighted down by more bones or packed with turf and moss to create an airtight seal. Inside, it wasn't just a cramped survival pod. It was a sophisticated living space with designated areas for different tasks and, most importantly, a central hearth that kept the interior surprisingly cozy. The level of planning here is what really hits you. They weren't just scavengers picking up whatever they found, they were selective. They chose specific bones for specific structural roles, showing an intimate understanding of physics and load-bearing. Some experts even think they might have hunted these mammoths specifically for building materials, though scavenging from mammoth graveyards was probably the smarter, less get stomped to death route. These structures were so sturdy and well insulated that they became the ultimate defiance against the Ice Age. It's the kind of place where you could actually take off your heavy furs, sit by the fire, and forget for a moment that there was a glacier just a few miles away. But once you have the walls and the roof, the real challenge begins. How do you keep your actual body from freezing when the fire dims? Because even in a bone palace, you still need something soft to sink into when the sun goes down. So, you've got your mammoth bone palace all set up. It's sturdy, it's grand, and it's blocking that lethal Arctic wind. But here is the thing, even the most impressive bone hut is still just a shell. If you lie down on that frozen permafrost floor in nothing but your birthday suit, you aren't waking up the next morning. To survive a night where the air literally tries to kill you, you need more than just a roof over your head, you need a second skin. And 30,000 years ago, humans figured out how to make one that was so effective, it would make your high-tech North Face parka look like a cheap windbreaker. The real unsung hero of the Ice Age wasn't the spear or the flint knife, it was the tiny, delicate, eyed bone needle. Think about that for a second. Around 40,000 years ago, somewhere in the frozen stretches of Siberia, someone had the genius idea to drill a tiny hole into a sliver of bone. It sounds simple, but it changed everything. Before the needle, you were basically just draping a heavy, awkward rug over your shoulders and hoping for the best. But with a needle and some sinew thread, you could suddenly tailor your clothes to fit your body perfectly. No gaps for the wind to whistle through, no loose edges to trip over. These people were rocking custom-fitted, multi-layered gear that kept their body heat trapped exactly where it belonged. And they weren't just using any old fur they found lying around. They were master material scientists. If you wanted to survive a Siberian winter, your absolute best friend was the reindeer. See, reindeer hair is special. It's hollow. Each individual hair is like a tiny straw filled with air, which provides an incredible level of insulation. It's basically nature's version of bubble wrap. By sewing together layers of reindeer hide with the fur facing inward against the skin and another layer with the fur facing out, they created a thermal barrier that was nearly impenetrable. They even made specialized boots and mittens, because once your toes go black from frostbite, your hunting days are over. And they made specialized mittens too. But the comfort didn't stop at the clothes. When it was time to actually hit the hay, they didn't just curl up in the dirt. At sites like Kamen Grubgraben in Austria, we found evidence that these people were tactical about their bedding. They didn't just hunt for food, they specifically targeted animals in the dead of winter when their coats were at their thickest and fluffiest. They'd create a sleeping sandwich of sorts. First, they'd lay down a thick mat of dried grass or pine branches to create a buffer between them and the frozen ground. Then, they'd pile on layers of cured hides. And here's the really clever part. They often treated these bedding areas with wood ash. Why? Because even in the Ice Age, bed bugs and lice were a nightmare. The ash acted as a natural repellent and desiccant, keeping the bedding dry and relatively pest-free. Imagine crawling into a nest of soft, hollow fiber furs tucked away from the howling wind, smelling the faint scent of wood smoke and earth. It wasn't just survival, it was actually cozy. You could stretch out, feel the warmth of your own breath, and finally let your guard down. But even with the best furs in the world, there is still one thing missing to turn a cold hut into a true home. You need that glowing, dancing heart in the center of the room that turns a dark cave into a sanctuary. Because in the deep freeze of the Pleistocene, the difference between a good night's sleep and a permanent one often came down to the magic of the flame. Now, you've got your bone walls and your high-tech fur blankets, but let's be real, without a heat source, you're still just a very well-insulated ice cube. To truly conquer a night in the Ice Age, you needed an engine, a glowing heart that pumped life into the shelter. And our ancestors weren't just poking at a few sticks, they were masters of thermal dynamics. If we look at sites like Dolní Věstonice in the modern-day Czech Republic from about 31,000 years ago, we see that the central hearth wasn't just for roasting meat. It was a sophisticated heating system that would put some modern fireplaces to shame. They would build these massive, sunken hearths right in the middle of the hut to radiate heat in every direction. But the real genius was in what they did with the leftovers. See, after a big fire burns down, you're left with a thick layer of hot ash and embers. Instead of just sweeping it away, they used it to create what I like to call the Pleistocene version of underfloor heating. They would spread that warm ash out and cover it with a layer of earth or sand, then pile their grass mats and furs right on top. It turned the ground into a giant thermal battery that stayed warm for hours after the actual flames died down. Imagine sliding into a bed that's already preheated to a perfect, cozy temperature while the world outside is literally freezing solid. And this wasn't just about comfort, it was a high-stakes game of maintenance. Keeping a fire going in a treeless tundra was a full-time job. They had to be incredibly stingy with their fuel, often using dried mammoth dung or even bone fat to keep the embers alive. Bones actually burn surprisingly well because of the marrow and fats inside, providing a slow, steady heat that lasts much longer than a quick wood fire. There was likely a fire watch system where family members took turns through the night, making sure that orange glow never flickered out. If the fire died, the temperature inside the hut would drop like a stone in minutes. But the fire did more than just warm their toes. It was the ultimate multitasker. The smoke filtered up through the hide roof, which sounds annoying, but it actually helped preserve the leather and kept the bugs away. Plus, That constant dry heat kept the interior of the hut from getting damp and moldy, a huge deal when you're living in a humid, snowy environment. It's hard to overstate how much this changed the human experience. Suddenly, the night wasn't a time of shivering terror. It was a time of storytelling and security. The hearth became a literal circle of life, where the harsh reality of the Ice Age stopped at the edge of the light. But even with the best fire and the thickest furs, there is one final layer of warmth that no technology can replace. Because at the end of the day, the most powerful heater in the world is the person sleeping right next to you. At the end of the day, all the mammoth bones and reindeer furs in the world are just stuff. The real magic, the thing that actually kept the darkness at bay, was the person lying right next to you. We are social animals, and 30,000 years ago, being social was the ultimate survival strategy. Think about it, the average human body radiates about 100 watts of heat. Now, put a family of 10 or 12 inside one of those tightly insulated bone huts, and you've essentially turned the entire room into a giant, living radiator. It's what scientists call huddling, but for our ancestors, it was just a typical Tuesday night. You didn't just sleep near your family for comfort, you did it because your life literally depended on their body heat, but it went much deeper than just sharing a few calories of warmth. We see this in the incredible archaeological finds at places like Dolny Viestonis. There is a famous triple burial there, 3 young people buried together with an incredible amount of care and detail. One was even covered in red ochre, a vibrant pigment that clearly held a deep, spiritual meaning for them. It shows us that these weren't just cold, hungry people fighting a losing battle against nature. They were families with complex stories, rituals, and a massive amount of love for one another. They didn't just sleep to rest their muscles, they slept to dream together. While the blizzard was screaming across the tundra outside, they were inside, probably carving delicate ivory figurines or sharing legends about the stars that peeked through the smoke hole in the roof. This human connection is the real reason we are still here today. It's why they spent so much energy decorating their tools and burying their loved ones with such honor. They understood that in a world where the environment is constantly trying to kill you, your only real shield is the pack. When you look at those ancient bone ruins today, don't just see a pile of debris from a dead civilization. See a sanctuary where a mother tucked in her child, where elders passed down wisdom by the dying glow of the embers, and where humans prove that even at -40 degrees, the spirit doesn't have to freeze. They didn't just survive the Ice Age, they conquered it by refusing to let the cold get into their hearts.